If you're an importer, it's pretty important to know, whom you're importing from and their relationships. And this is Jamie from Vigilant. And Jamie, you're going to be talking about that mapping, that supply chain, and the risks that folks have just got to be aware of.
You've got to be aware of that. And we've mentioned in previous trade buzzes, and I know that my friend Joe has as well. Yeah, that criticality of understanding, know your customer and know your supplier. And anymore, it's not enough just to know your supplier and have a great relationship with the supplier. It's starting to have a relation, making sure that your supplier has good relationships with their suppliers. You want to be able to avoid any potential problems that are coming up due to a lack of knowledge further down in the supply chain. I think really the UFLPA, which is the forced labor regulations that recently came out, that's really highlighted the absolute necessity to stay on top of your suppliers and know what's happening down to that granular level. They don't want to know just where you got a product. And for textiles, for instance, they want to know the exact geographic location of where the cotton was grown that ultimately ended up in that product. That's the level of scrutiny that we're going to anymore. So that mapping and knowing all the way down to that really granular level has become more important than ever.
What kind of tools are there to help?
Yeah, there are plenty of tools out there. I think I will go back and just pinpoint what we had discussed earlier around, looking for USMCA, OFAC 50, all these things. You really do have to have in your contracts the ability to ask questions and be able to dig down further to be able to do those mapping and allowing your contractually obligating your suppliers to help support this overall process. But there is technology that's out there similar to the OFAC 50 and the Biz 50 requirements around the marking supply chain or mapping supply chain situation. Tools like Sayari, Altana, Corone, those type of companies do provide this relationship structure that is there that can help you to be able to look, okay, this is my supplier. Those systems can map who are their suppliers and their suppliers' suppliers so that you can help to understand what those relationships are like. You don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden you end up with someone that you've just done business with that does have, some sort of forced labor situation way down in one of their supplier, down to 10, 15 tiers. You don't want to be in those situations. It's not great for PR. It's not good from a human rights perspective, and it's definitely a violation.
Some of those tools you mentioned in companies, you guys have probably used them or worked with them?
Absolutely. We use them regularly. We have relationships with them. They're part of our systems. They're part of our relationships. They're part of the consultative and managed services work that we do. It's critical. You can't do it anymore without them. It's just too difficult to try and do that level of research without having that content, that robust content that they've collected by pulling all that information, those sources, and consolidating in one location. It really is, a game changer.
Well, and you probably have an insight of who best to deploy for what particular problem.
Yeah, so we can definitely work with you to figure out based off of your requirements what the best situation is. I will say another issue with this overall, with the mapping exercise and collecting documents like for forced labor, oftentimes the challenge you run into is confidentiality again. This is a situation where your supplier maybe doesn't want to tell you who their supplier is, right? So one thing that we have noticed is that a lot of companies will leverage a third party like ourselves or another consulting or law firm to help them collect that documentation. And that way, if the government does ask for it, you can provide that service provider under a non-disclosure agreement can provide that information directly to the government. So that's one way that we're seeing really successful importers manage this problem.
Right. And if somebody's interested in talking more about this,
please contact us on our website or reach out to me directly.